Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coby's Brain. Thank you all for joining, and get ready for some reviews. First up, we have the 1973 film directed by George Lucas, American Graffiti. American Graffiti is a movie that takes place during one summer night in 1962 and is a coming-of-age story about four high school seniors in Modesto, California. So the movie was pretty funny and definitely feels relatable and nostalgic to anyone who graduated from an American high school. I also didn't realize this, but apparently it was a famously accurate depiction of teenage life in the 60s when, quote, cruising, which means it was the social thing that people did by driving around with other teenagers and hanging out, was the most popular activity. It was just, I guess, what you did in the 60s, which looked pretty cool. It looked like a good time, but apparently it seems a little dangerous, but seems cool. Also doesn't seem like a great use of gas, so I don't know if it would be something that would be popular today, considering the prices of gas. Also, seems pretty limited to people with cars, so that's not super fun, but whatever. The only the thing that I didn't really like about the film, very few things. I felt like the only characters that were actually multidimensional were just white males, but the characters were apparently supposed to represent Lucas, so I guess that makes sense. Ultimately, the film's high school nostalgia, famously accurate depiction of the 60s, a period of time I didn't really know too much about, and its comedy made it very interesting and entertaining. We love this film on Coby's Brain. We're giving it an 8.4 out of 10. That is a silver Coby coin for George Lucas. Up next, we have the 1984 film directed by Martin Brest, Beverly Hills Cop. Beverly Hills Cop is a police action comedy about a Detroit officer who goes to Beverly Hills to investigate the murder of his friend. It's kind of a fish out of water story. The movie's hilarious, largely thanks to Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's great. I feel like this movie's an example of where the actor that was chosen really couldn't have been anyone else. He crushed it. He's so funny in this movie. And I think his portrayal of Detroit cop Axel Foley is truly priceless. I also really liked Sergeant John Taggart and Detective Billy Rosewood, who were kind of fun characters also. And the soundtrack, great. Epic soundtrack, made for a super fun movie watching experience. Final shootout's a little ridiculous though, and the story kind of goes from being about a murder over German bonds to being about cocaine smuggling. I don't know, kind of all over the place. Ultimately, Eddie Murphy makes the movie truly hilarious, and watching this film is a guaranteed great time. We love it on Coby's Brain. We're giving it an 8.3 out of 10. That's a silver Coby coin. Congratulations to Beverly Hills Cop. Next up, we have the 2016 Spike Lee documentary, Michael Jackson's Journey from Motown to Off the Wall. Michael Jackson's Journey from Motown to Off the Wall is actually Spike Lee's second documentary about Michael Jackson's music, the first being, I think, about Thriller. And it chronicles his musical career from his early days of being in the Jackson 5 as the frontman to his fifth studio album, Off the Wall. The documentary, it's pretty interesting because honestly, prior to watching it, I didn't really know too much about Michael Jackson and just how hugely influential his music was. And it was really interesting to learn about that early career and how he went from being that young boy prodigy to being the massive phenomenon he ended up becoming. I never realized, I guess, how hardworking Michael Jackson was and how obsessive he was with being the best. So it's kind of no surprise that he ended up being as massively successful in music as he was. Featured a lot of really great commentary from a lot of celebrities, including The Weeknd, Kobe Bryant, John Legend, and a bunch of others. So the film, it doesn't really address any of the controversy around Jackson. And I don't know, the question of whether it's necessary to do that is an interesting one. That wasn't the point of this movie, though, and I think there was enough other substance to talk about. But anyways, ultimately, the film does a good job of chronicling Jackson's meteoric rise to stardom. And considering the scale of that stardom, it's a pretty interesting story. So if you don't know about it, definitely recommend this film. We liked it on Coby's Brain. We're giving it a 7.7 out of 10. That is a bronze Coby coin for this Spike Lee documentary. Next up, we have the 2019 documentary directed by Dan Reed, Leaving Neverland. Leaving Neverland, a very difficult film to discuss on this rather lighthearted show, Coby's Brain, was a 2-part HBO documentary about two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who claimed they were sexually abused by Michael Jackson for many years when they were kids. The documentary is extremely detailed and thorough and leaves little doubt that Jackson did what the man claimed he did. It is extremely difficult to watch, but details the impact of child sexual abuse later on in life pretty well. It is obviously pretty one-sided, but it's still hard to deny the truthfulness of the documentary. It also does, unfortunately, coincide with both men seeking large cash settlements from the Jackson estate, so I think that's unfortunate for people, for those who are, for the men in the documentary whose credibility is constantly being argued against, which is really sad considering all they had to go through. But yeah, watching this, crazy to do in juxtaposition with the Spike Lee documentary From Motown to Off the Wall, which really doesn't go into any details about these Michael Jackson controversies. So it's hard to say what impact this movie will have on Jackson's legacy, because if the allegations are true, which it really seems like they are, it's pretty terrible, pretty horrible what went down. So ultimately, Leaving Neverland does a good job of describing the impacts of child abuse, made even more difficult at the hands of a rich and powerful celebrity. Hopefully, it has the impact of bringing awareness to child sexual abuse so that people feel that they're able to talk about it like these individuals did not feel like they were able to talk about. So, for that reason, we are giving Leaving Neverland a 7.9 out of 10, which is a bronze Coby coin. Next up, we have the 1984 film directed by Albert Magnoli, Purple Rain. Purple Rain is a musical drama starring Prince about a Minneapolis musician dealing with a difficult home life, a lack of musical success, unfortunately, and an ambivalent girlfriend. Prince is pretty cool. He's dope in this movie. He's total badass, riding typical 80s badass, riding his motorcycle around town, being rebellious, and the music is awesome. It's a really, really, really good soundtrack. However, Prince's character, pretty hard to like after he hits his girlfriend. Probably shouldn't have done that. I get why he did it, because his dad did it, but didn't really make me want to root for him. And I'm also not really a huge fan of that trope where when a character suddenly has a good musical performance, everything's suddenly fine. I feel like that happens in so many movies, and I feel like it doesn't actually make that big of a difference. I don't know, though. Maybe it does. You have a good musical performance, and that can change everything. So that's cool, but it just happens a lot. Ultimately, due to the difficulty of really liking the kid who Prince portrays, even though he's dope, even though he's a total badass, and the fact that it was mostly just a concert film with a plot as a secondary priority, the fact that that Prince is awesome to watch was great, but probably wasn't enough for me to really like the movie. So unfortunately, we're giving it a 7.4 out of 10. Just missed that bronze Coby coin, and it's getting a wooden Coby coin. However, totally recommend it if you are a fan of Prince. He's pretty cool in this movie, and it's his acting debut. Next up, we have the 1993 film directed by Brian Gibson, What's Love Got to Do with It? What's Love Got to Do with It is a biopic of Tina Turner that focuses on the abuse she experienced at the hands of her ex-husband and former musical collaborator, Ike Turner. The film is super powerful. Lawrence Fishburne's portrayal of the abusive Ike Turner, terrifyingly good. Additionally, the story of Tina Turner leaving her abusive marriage and becoming even more of a massive star, super inspiring, and it's nice and cathartic. Apparently, unfortunately, there were a lot of aspects of film that were apparently fabricated, which is unfortunate because it's a super powerful story. But nonetheless, still a super powerful story. Ultimately, the film is super powerful, and you can't help but become a Tina Turner fan after watching it. I like Tina Turner a lot now. I didn't really know her too well before, but this movie made me a fan. We're giving it an 8.3 out of 10. That's a silver Coby coin for Tina Turner's biopic. Congratulations. Next up, we have the 2008 film directed by Peter Segal, Get Smart. Get Smart is a spy action comedy about a spy duo played by Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway who must stop a nuclear attack set to take place in the city of Los Angeles. The cast in this movie is totally stacked. Totally stacked. You got Steve Carell, Anne Hathaway, The Rock, Alan Arkin, Terry Crews, and Bill Murray. They're all hilarious. So the movie is filled with laughs. I was laughing decently hard throughout. I have no idea how they got such an incredible cast to sign on for this movie, but they did it. However, the story was difficult to follow and a little bit ridiculous. The VFX, not that good, but that was to be expected considering how many ridiculously insane action sequences there were. They should have just simplified those. And it was kind of annoying how at times Steve Carell's character was incompetent and other times he was just the best spy ever. Love story with Anne Hathaway, totally unbelievable, but whatever. Ultimately, despite the incredible and hilarious cast, movie's story was just a little too ridiculous, and at a certain point, I just kind of wanted it to end. So unfortunately, we're giving Get Smart a 6.8 out of 10. That is a wooden Coby coin. Next up, we have the 2021 film directed by Andy Serkis, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Venom, Let There Be Carnage is the sequel to the 2018 Venom film about an alien symbiote who inhabits the body of journalist Eddie Brock, who must stop a serial killer that is similarly inhabited by an alien symbiote. Carnage. I really liked this movie, even more than the first one, because it really allowed us to kind of explore this fascinating relationship between Eddie Brock, who's Tom Hardy, great actor, and Venom. Venom is hilarious, so adorable, even though he's terrifying, and even though he's terrifying like that, we just love him. I love him. It made me really want a Venom of my own. I would love. It has some downsides for sure, but I'd be down. Additionally, the mid-credit scene leads me to believe that Venom will be involved in the next Spider-Man movie, which is the best news of the year. I really can't wait. I would love to have him in there. The rest of the story was a little ridiculous. The final action scene was drawn out, and Francis Barrison as a villain who yells really loudly was not that great. But whatever, it's all good. Ultimately, the relationship between Eddie and Venom is perhaps the best relationship I've seen on screen in quite some time, and I couldn't get enough. I love Venom. Venom is the best. I really love him, and I can't wait until he is involved in the MCU. On Coby's brain, we're giving Venom Let There Be Carnage an 8.2 out of 10. That is a silver Coby coin. Congrats, Venom. Up next, we are transitioning into Coby's reading blog, covering the 2008 book by Dr. Todd Boyd, Young, Black, Rich, and Famous, The Rise of the NBA, the Hip-Hop Invasion, and the Transformation of American Culture. Young, Rich, Black, and Famous, The Rise of the NBA, the Hip-Hop Invasion, and the Transformation of American Culture is a book about the changes that the NBA underwent around the 80s and in the years after that as a result of the increased number of black players and the influence of hip-hop. I've recently become a basketball fan again, for the first time in a while, actually, due to the incredible season that the Suns, shout out the Suns, had this past year. And as a result, this book was really interesting for me. Focused on a number of influential players like Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, and others, and contextualized them and what was happening in the NBA and NCAA at the time. It's really interesting, but it is at times kind of anecdotal. But, you know, getting anecdotes from the notorious PhD Dr. Todd Boyd, shout out Dr. Todd Boyd, is great. He's awesome. If you already know a lot about basketball, though, you might not find it to be particularly revelatory. Ultimately, I really enjoyed this book, which does a great job of contextualizing the contemporary NBA and discussing the lives of some American icons and the impact that they had on the sport of basketball and the impact that the sport of basketball and hip-hop have had on American culture at large. Dr. Todd Boyd, you crushed it with this one. You're the man. You're getting an 8.4 out of 10. That is a silver Coby coin for this book. Next up, we have Baby Keem's latest album from September 2021, The Melodic Blue. The Melodic Blue is Los Angeles rapper Baby Keem's debut studio album. Bangers include Trademark USA, Range Brothers featuring Kendrick Lamar, South Africa, Coco featuring Don Toliver, Family Ties featuring Kendrick Lamar, Scars, Do-Rag Activity featuring Travis Scott. That was a lot of songs, but most of the songs are bangers on this album. Totally fire. Keem's sound is pretty unique, pretty interesting. It kind of sounds like he's joke rapping, but it's legit. And for me, it took a second to get used to, but now I love it. I think Baby Keem is amazing. I think he crushed it. Ultimately, album is full of bangers. Best songs, in my opinion, on the album are probably the collaborations with Baby Keem's cousin, Kendrick Lamar. So many great songs on this album. I also really loved Coco with Don Toliver. We loved Baby Keem's debut on here on Coby's Brain. We're giving it an 8.4 out of 10. That is a silver Coby coin for Baby Keem. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Coby's Brain. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.